Today is 17 years since the signing in Accra, Ghana, of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement that ended the 14 years of the Liberian Civil War. 3 years ago, when we reached the landmark of ending 14 years of war and reaching 14 years of peace, which balanced off the equation, I formally proposed to the National Legislature the adoption of August 18 as a National Peace Day, and for appropriate national awards to be given out to those who work for peace in Liberia. For the 10th anniversary, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, a signatory to the peace agreement, commissioned an elaborate celebration, which I was honored to organize very successfully. In the subsequent years, Cultural Ambassador Judy Endy has organized events in celebration of this day. For the purpose of history, I am pleased to share some relevant parts of a letter I wrote to the Senate on August 17, 2016. For 14 years, from December 24, 1989 to August 18, 2003, our country was engulfed in a war with itself, during which about 250,000 people, or 7% of the population at the time, died. More than 1 million people, or about 29% of the population, were internally and externally displaced. Nearly every family, every village, town, community, and city suffered physical devastation and psychological damage. Social and economic infrastructure in hundreds of millions of US dollars, if not several billions of US dollars, were destroyed. And Liberia was condemned to a failed state and a beggar nation. During the carnage, Liberian men and women, youth and students of all ethnic, religious, and other backgrounds, joined by West African and other African peoples and their governments and organizations, and the international community through the Economic Community of West African States, the African Union, the United Nations, and some of the member states and regional bodies, as well as non-governmental and humanitarian organizations, worked together in an extraordinary show of solidarity to end the war and restore peace in this country. After much sacrifices by the Liberian people, the warring factions, political parties, religious leaders, women leaders, youth and students, and their organizations crowned their many sacrifices and gatherings for peace by attending a peace conference in Ghana, facilitated by ECOWAS, assisted by the United Nations and the African Union and the United States of America, with former Nigerian head of state, General A. Abdulsalami A. Abubakar, as principal mediator. On August 18, 2003, the Liberian leaders made a solemn and strong pledge to end the war by signing the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, which was the outcome of 3 months, June to August, of negotiations. By their signatures, the leaders, in the name of the Liberian people, promised this country and the world, one, that Liberia would never go to war with itself again, that we would never allow the use of Liberian territory for war against its neighbors, that we would disarm ourselves and remove weapons of destruction from our politics, that we will rebuild, reform, and recreate governing institutions such as the legislature, the executive, and judiciary, necessary for enduring peace in this country. That our defense and security institutions will be reformed, overhauled, and, where necessary, be recreated to serve the Liberian people and never to be used as instruments of regime repression. That we would use electoral means to choose leaders as provided for in the Constitution. That justice, truth, and reconciliation will be core avenue to sustain peace. That we would give hope to the children and young people of our country, that there is a future for which to live and to work. And that we will fully and unwaveringly commit ourselves to peace, socio-economic progress, democracy, and above all, to love of country. On this 18th day of August 2020, today, we, the people of Liberia, must be proud of ourselves that we have been keeping our pledge for peace. We, the people, should therefore celebrate that peace have won over war. To continue the victory of peace over war, we must never allow any of our institutions and individual leaders to be so intolerant as to force our citizens to choose violence or to choose fleeing to a foreign country to live as refugees, fearing for their safety. We must continue to freely organize ourselves to pursue our political, religious, and other wishes, ambitions, interests, and beliefs. And we must express our views on all matters without fear, but guided by patriotism, truth, and civility. Recent events in our country are raising fears against which the government of President once again for the kind consideration of this honorable House, this honorable Senate, and the entire legislature, the passage into law two actions. One, the creation of a National Day of Peace to be celebrated on the 18th of August each year as a working holiday. On that day, throughout the country, there should be a program of thanksgiving, of peace education, emphasizing never again to war, based on the causes and lessons of the Liberian Civil War, and a peace festival, and peace festivals, cultural, sporting, and other activities. The creation of a special national recognition for peace, which could be done in two categories at separate ceremonies. One, to be named the Legislative Medal for Peace, to be awarded annually by the National Legislature to those who our legislative leadership may consider to have contributed in special ways to the promotion and maintaining of peace and in Liberia. And the other category could be called the State Medal of Peace, to be awarded by the President of the Republic of Liberia to those individuals or organizations that have made extraordinary contributions to the promotion and maintaining of peace in Liberia. I believe that by taking these legislative actions in remembrance of the CPA, we would and could be reminding ourselves, the people we represent and who stood by the Liberian people, especially those whose blood and sweat made us to live today. And we made a promise to keep, and vowed to renew it in all ways and at all times in the best interests of our children and future generations. Thank you. I have to say that just a few days ago, Senator Zago chaired a legislative committee that brought all our security actors, the national security actors, the police, the chief of we called in the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Defense, the Chief of Police, and all of the head of the armed forces, the National Security Agency, the the advisor to the President of National Security, the immigration, DEA, every one of them. We brought them together, and we had a very, very interesting discussion. That discussion was hearing. That was basically to remind them that we were going a slope, down a slope that was preventing, that was showing that we are heading to confusion, to trouble. This was a threat, and we didn't want to say, we told you so alone. We wanted to make sure that together, we could work together to find a solution to what was happening. So Senator Zago is a key figure in this, besides it being his professional life. We've been working together on these issues, and we're trying to make the point that people quick to forget. 17 years ago, many of you in this room were running with your mothers because the men ran away. And you were not strong enough. So whatever you hear about the war will be stories that you heard. Many of you were not 15 years old. So we have to keep reminding people that this country went down a dangerous slope. And we must keep reminding ourselves that we must never allow that to happen. And that is what Senator Zago and a couple of colleagues in the legislature and myself are doing. Sometimes it sounds like, repeating things, but we depend on you all to keep reminding people about what's going on. And we don't want any, because we know this is exactly all the conflicts in our country that ended into violence were conflicts that were associated with elections. And that is why we have to keep reminding people it's just not a celebration, but to use it to remind ourselves and assuring that whatever we do will be in promotion of peace and justice.
So,
Senator Zago may just would like to say something before this.
Again, let me just use the opportunity to thank you, Senator Wesseh. You play a pivotal role in sustaining the peace in this country. You've been our ambassador. I like how you highlighted the historicity when it comes to how we evolve as a country, growing out of conflict. Again, because I'm a member of the ECOWAS Parliament, I feel obligated to join you in the conference and also as a member of the Security Committee. Security is pivotal. We all have a yeoman role to play in this thing. We got to keep the peace. If you think, as it is said, that education is expensive, try ignorance. If you think peace is not sweet, try war. You get to realize how good is peace. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
yeah. So I'm Debo from the New Dawn. Do you sense any instances or indicators that pointing toward violence ahead of the December 8th election?
Well, just one second. I think from what we've seen, the event in Grand Chile, the case of Mr. Dillon in Clarktown, this is just the most recent. The things that happened before in Logantown and what's the other place, the prior election, just show that the kind of sentiments that are going into electing 15 senators, clearly shows that if we do not manage well, we will make our police, our security services totally incapable of managing, because those things are happening across the country. The thing that made them believe that they could bring the soldiers the other day in Grand Guinea will make them to want to carry the soldiers at any given time throughout the 15 counties. So there are dangers in line. And once these security agencies begin to act like they are regime organizations, then people will stop to respect them and people begin to take the law into their own hands. That's why we have to deal with it now, because we know it, we know the problem.
My name is Kelvin from.
One at a time.
Look,
Yeah, Senator Wesseh. Okay. I'm Augustine Side, I report for 2 FM. I listened to you, you spoke about a call for a National Day celebration. And that chose me to ask you as to whether you want it to be a national holiday wherein business areas and offices will be closed, or you just want, the day to have a ceremony wherein the strive the country has made when it comes to maintaining peace, can be celebrated.
I said working holiday.
Yes, Senator, you talk about all the explanations, and you say there are certain people here that were not present at the time, or they couldn't understand exactly what led to the peace that all of us enjoy today. But you're only talking about reminder. What about having some kind of modalities put into place that will be either in the form of radio programs that will let people know that there's a need for peace and don't try to preach it, apart from just saying, or in other words, what are other mechanisms you're trying to put into place that can also remind people about the upheaval we went through and then the peace we're enjoying today?
Well, I think we'll give you a copy of this, and then you'll be able to understand what we said. That in the celebration, we said you will do peace education, you will do awareness, Thanksgiving programs, you will do cultural events, sporting activities, a whole manner of stuff.
Okay.
And clearly, the media will be key in all of this.
My name is Jackson Clay, and I write for ABC Radio. Senator Wesseh, I may recall this will be your second or third time calling for this thing, and it not seems to be getting anywhere. What's been previously last year? Previous government, we happen to be your government, your unity party government. They see this as a genuine thing to follow up on the purpose of recommendation. Now you are probably in an opposition standpoint. Do you see this? You're getting some fruit again.
Actually, in the search for peace, there is no opposition. This is one thing on which everybody ought to agree. Because the first people to feel the threat of peace, of lack of peace, is the governing authority. It wasn't, everybody went into exile one way or the other, but for Charles Taylor to go, it was a big ceremony, and a big plane came to carry him. And he did not stop there. He's in another country celebrating. So if he had worked for peace, he would be here with us today. So governments, because that's why we elected you. The purpose of electing any of us is we must do everything so that our people can have peace. And having peace also means that we have to put into place mechanisms that will make the thing that make people angry first be taken care of. How we look for jobs, make sure people have opportunity to go to hospital if they have to, their children can go to school, and things like that. We have that primary responsibility.